This is a new act where they're offering $20 billion worth, and we'll call it NHIA tax credits over the next 5 years that will result in approximately 500,000 homes built or rehabilitated, creating a pathway for more families to buy a home, and start building wealth.
Welcome to Buzz House, a Baker Tilly podcast where you can find all the buzz around multifamily housing. I'm Don Bernards, the partner in charge of Baker Tilly's multifamily housing practice.
And I'm Garrett Gibson, a partner at Baker Tilly, also specializing in consulting on multifamily housing transactions across the country.
Each week, we'll bring you a guest or a topic in the multifamily housing industry that will help you win now and anticipate tomorrow. Let's get started. As we move into December of 2021, Garrett and I want to have a discussion around a recap of some of the hot topics of this past year, which every year seems to be unusual for one reason or another, especially in the multifamily and affordable space. But really, what do we see? What are maybe we're to keep our eyes on going into 2022 and issues affecting your projects? Before jumping into this discussion with Garrett, we want to give you just a few updates from around the industry. Everyone in the industry is keeping their eyes and ears on the Buildback Better Act. The House, of course, passed this version and sent it on to the Senate. Good chance it will likely be amended in some form and fashion. What that might look like, who knows? We really don't know at this time. The House version, of course, does include a handful of low-income housing tax credit provisions. Obviously, very good news for the industry up to this date. So some of these key provisions, which you may have seen and heard about, are increasing the 9% LIHTC per capita by 10% per year for just from 2022 through 2024. A big one, and we're going to touch on this in a few minutes again, lowering the 50% test for a handful of years, number of years, down to 25%. Again, we'll touch on that. Enables a 50% basis boost for properties serving extremely low income tenants and a 30% basis boost for developments in Native American areas. Repeals qualified contracts for all properties receiving allocations after December 31st, 2021. Of course, a number of states had already effectively implemented that, but that would be in the code. I find this next one interesting. Makes several modifications to the right of first refusal, including changing the purchase price to only debt rather than debt plus exit taxes, as well as not requiring a bona fide third-party offer in order to exercise this right. So really just kind of simplifying, clearing up kind of the nonprofit right of first refusal. And really the last item, Garrett's going to touch on this a little bit later, is there's a proposed neighborhood homes tax credit, which would produce affordable owner-occupied, so rather than rental, owner-occupied homes. So a lot more to come on that. We'll see what the Senate does. Of course, we'll be covering that a lot here in the Buzz House going forward, and actually, would perhaps even have a live kind of discussion on it. A couple other items. The IRS did publish the 2022 LIHTC and private activity bond caps per state. Of course, this is before any Build Back Better provisions and so forth, and actually note that the 9% cap for 2022, which is $2.60, is actually going to be down from 2021. So actually a decrease from your 2021 levels, as 2021 was the last year of a 12.5% increase that we saw from 2018 through 2021. So the industry really needs this increase to even keep the levels and obviously increase the levels of credits. A quick congratulations to former CEO of the Wisconsin Housing Economic Development Authority, Joaquin El Toro, on his appointment as the administrator of the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Rural Housing Service. This was effective November 11th, so we wish Mr. El Toro best wishes as he helps to move USDA forward on the housing side. Finally, HUD's biannual Worst Case Housing Needs 2020 report came out recently. This report uses 2019, so it's a 2-year lag, uses 2019 American Housing Survey data, notes that almost 7.8 million renters at 50% or below the area median income that do not receive any rental assistance of any sorts are spending more than 50% of their income on their rent and or are households who live in inadequate housing conditions. Again, this just highlights the significant shortage of affordable units throughout the country. The report also notes that housing costs have risen about 3 times quicker than income levels of lower income persons. Again, just that need, we've talked about the gap and the need for housing. With that, Garrett and I are now going to move into our discussion of topics we've really discussed over the past year and really keeping our eyes on trends as we move into 2022. Garrick?
All right, Don, thanks. The first item I can discuss is one that there has been a lot of discussion on in affordable housing and community development in general, and this is surrounding social impact capital. You know, in our last podcast, Bob Simpson noted there was 40 trillion in global social impact capital, and in addition, you know, it seems to be a lot of work going on to define what these social impacts are, you know, and underwriting and products that are around affordable and other forms of housing, such as workforce housing. So, you know, I hope there is a lot of more to come on this topic. As we see, you know, if the industry can funnel a lot of these dollars that are going to be coming out into into multifamilies within the affordable space.
I think, yeah, Garrick, I think it's a very exciting area. I think you and I are definitely going to kind of stay in tune on this, talking to a lot of people. I think we see some funds coming out in 2022 around workforce housing. So we'll listeners will stay keep you in tune with what we learn, and as this kind of continues to define itself, especially around multifamily housing. The next topic I just want to briefly touch on, of course, is the fixed 4% rate, right? That came out at the end of 2020. Obviously, very significant for everyone working in the 4% taxes exempt bond space. We've definitely seen an increase in the amount of 4% deals across the country. Obviously, the negative is more and more states are running out of volume cap. There were up to 19 states actually which are running near either are out or dangerously close to running out of volume cap. And of course, you need that authority to be able to utilize 4% tax credits. Volume cap again can be used for single family, various infrastructure. So states, again, if Buildback Better does not pass, reducing the 50 to 25, which I know Garrick you had mentioned earlier when we were talking, that's only for I believe a 5-year period. So that might sunset as well. That this is an issue.
Thanks for that insight, Don. So switching gears, I want to talk about construction cost. Because that still remains a concern to all parties involved, in multifamily deals, right? Closing deals right now with equity investors and lenders, they generally want to see as much of the contract bought out as possible. We've also seen situations where general contractors are asking for very large deposits or payments to get some materials ordered as soon as possible due to the supply chain issues we're facing. It appears it'll be a while before supplies are caught up. For example, over this past year, we saw and are seeing construction costs up 20 to 30% in pretty much in all parts of the country.
Perfect. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is average income. It might be known as income averaging, where of course you can go up to 80% AMI in your unit mix as long as your overall average of units remains 60% or below. Just remains a hot topic. Of course, you remember the IRS held a public hearing in the spring, and the industry is still waiting to hear feedback from the IRS. And so just still, of course, a lot of hesitancy on behalf of investors. In talking with investors, and we recorded at the AHF Live conference last week, probably talked with a dozen different investors, still most hesitant to underwrite and look at a income average deal. Obviously there's risk based on the current IRS guidance with how the deals would be set up and monitored and so forth. There are some. We're not going to say there's none. We've helped developers close a handful of these income average deals. Yeah, obviously there's a lot of sensitivity analysis done by investors. What if some of my units flip to 60s from 30s and so on and so forth? We've seen deals close, I think, anywhere from 55 to 58%, average income. More we're seeing some press down to give a little bit more cushion in that percentage, more around 55%. Again, if kind of the takeaway here, if you're considering an average income deal for any reason, maybe you have a Section 8 deal with a few over income tenants, over 60% AMI, you have a large bond deal, and you just want to hit, a lot of different income stratas, definitely reach out and talk to investors. There is some interest, but as you probably are well aware, not a lot of interest until we kind of get further IRS guidance.
Thanks for that insight, Don. I want to jump in and start talking about this proposed Neighborhood Homes Investment Act. This is a new act where they're offering $20 billion worth, and we'll call it NHIA tax credits over the next 5 years that will result in approximately 500,000 homes built or rehabilitated, creating a pathway for more families to buy a home, and start building wealth. The NHIA would offer tax credits to attract private investment for building and rehabilitating owner-occupied homes. obviously creating a pathway to neighborhood stability through this sustainable home ownership idea. Similar to the LIHTC credit, that we have in rental housing, the states would allocate and administer this credit. The process would start with states writing plans for allocating these tax credits based on, set criteria, including the prospect that a proposed project will contribute to the neighborhood stabilization or revitalization and the strength of project sponsors. States could also likely add their own allocation criteria. Similar to how states administer the LIHTC program. States would then select the NHIA project sponsors like the developers, investors, lenders, and local governments through a competitive process. Sounds familiar, huh? So, but unlike the grant program that's out there, this tax credit is only going to pay for success because this credit is only applied after construction is completed and a qualified homeowner occupies the house. So in addition, this tax credit will fill only the actual value gap as determined by the market. So if a home sells for more than the cost of the development, no credits will be used. The private sector will also shoulder the key risks, such as the possibility that the project does not get completed or a qualified homeowner does not purchase it. So it sounds pretty interesting, and looking forward to see how this plays out.
Right, that would be really interesting. Right, there hasn't obviously been a lot on the home ownership side and affordability as far as the credit. One thing I want to touch on next is just public housing repositioning. Obviously, that's a big buzzword and a hot topic. Right, we a lot of activity all around the country in this front. Redevelopment, new construction, very flexible programs. Most listeners are familiar with the Rental Assistance Demonstration, or RAD program, which has been out around 10 years. The program allows for the conversion of public housing assistance to project-based Section 8 programs. HUD over the last 10 years, right, has continued to update and modify RAD to allow for more housing authorities to reposition their aging housing stock. Maybe the original program that RAD came out 10 years ago didn't quite work well with, for one reason or another, small housing authority, a lot of rehab needed, scattered sites, just many different reasons why maybe RAD in its original state didn't work. And so many updates, modifications have come out. In 2021, the document that came out was HUD Notice 2021-07, which allows for things such as small housing authorities with less than 250 units to implement a RAD Section 18 blend. A lot of the newer programs have been, or updates to RAD and modifications have been around trying to get like higher rents, to these deals. With these small PHAs, or 250 units or less, we can now get up to 80% of the units at essentially fair market rents, or 110% of fair market rents, which typically are going to be significantly higher than RAD rents. So really allowing these units to be able to get larger debt. If I'm renovating, doing new construction, maybe it's a 9% or 4%. So really the takeaway from this note is, there are a lot of tools in that HUD Public Housing Authority repositioning toolbox. Maybe it's this notice that came out in 2021, maybe it's something that came out in 2018. So just know when you're looking at your public housing authority, your developer working at the public housing authority, there's many tools that hopefully can be a fit as you move forward.
Thanks, Don. On another note, cost segregation studies continue to grow in popularity for driving yield and LIHTC deals. A lot of the LOIs that we have reviewed, lately and in the past over this last couple of years, specifically actually note the amount of 5 and 15-year depreciation the investor is expecting. And typically, these are large amounts that, from an accounting perspective, just going through the documents and carving out what's low-hanging fruit is not going to get to these kinds of expectations, which is, these expectations are driven by cost segregation studies. So sometimes the investor will pay for these cost segregation studies, and other times the project will pay for it. Currently, we're in bonus depreciation, right? It's 100% bonus to the end of 2022, and then 20% reductions from there all the way through until it's back to normal. So, pulling more into 5 and 15-year property and taking these accelerated losses, is obviously good for LIHTC investors. And a cost seg study can impact a project well over 100 basis points. So it's quite impactful, and we've actually seen cost seg studies able to break out many times roughly around 15 to 20% of the total depreciable cost in the 5 and 15-year property buckets. So, I had to mention that again, just because it seems like cost segregations are just a viable tool that's only going to keep growing in popularity.
No, that makes a lot of sense, Garrett. Thanks for that. And really, just one last note, listeners. In 2021, we've seen the affordable housing industry be very active in putting programs together around growing the capacity of emerging minority developers, from growing in knowledge, access to relationships, access to capital. Many groups, from syndicators to lenders to national nonprofits to groups such as Baker Tilly, are supporting these efforts and being intentional. Baker Tilly has a page on our website noting our intentional work in this area. I think you'll continue to see a lot on this in 2022 around educational programs and access to various capital. And Baker Tilly is actually planning on hosting a educational session sometime in the spring of 2022, so more to come on that. And looking forward to being involved in these endeavors. Garrick, thanks for a lot of updates. Please feel free to reach out to us on any of these topics as we kind of end 2021 and move into 2022. And thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, looking forward to 2022.
Thank you for listening to Buzzhouse. To receive a notification when new episodes are available, please subscribe to Buzzhouse, a Baker Tilly podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. For additional resources around multifamily housing, check out bakertilly.com. And if you have a suggested topic, please send them to build@bakertilly.com. That's BUILD@bakertilly.com.